brand is the only defensible thing anymore. Like product is no longer defensible. Marketing is no longer defensible. The only thing that I can really defend is if people are searching for my brand, they just focus on, what can make impact tomorrow rather than what can make impact 2 years from now. What we found to actually be way more impactful, and this is where all this is going, is you write based off of what is ranking currently on Google for page one for the target keyword that you're going after.
What one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Never build things that you want people to buy. Build things that people ask for you to build for them.
Hello, and welcome to the Business Growth Show, where I interview successful entrepreneurs on all areas of business and how to utilize them for exponential growth. My name is Nathan Cassiotis. I'm a business growth expert, investor, and international speaker, where I help business owners grow and scale to create wealth and freedom. Today, I have an awesome guest. His name is Cody Schneider, and he's a serial entrepreneur and innovator in AI-powered content marketing. And as founder of Draft Horse AI and Swell AI, he has helped numerous companies exponentially grow their businesses by leveraging AI to automate content production workflows. Named one of Business.com's top 25 marketers to watch, Cody gained his experience helping scale startups from the ground up through strategic content strategies. Welcome, Cody Schneider, and thank you for being on the Business Growth Show.
Yo, thank you for hosting me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome, man. I'm sure it's going to be awesome for everyone watching and listening today. You are a successful entrepreneur. So for those people who don't know who you are, introduce yourself by telling us a little bit more about you and your journey.
Yeah, great question. So I started out in e-commerce, really rode that first print on demand kind of wave that happened. This would have been in like 2011, 12, 13. Made a bunch of money, spent even more. It was the great time to be alive and be 20. It's kind of funny. I was on a different show recently, and I was like, when you're the richest of your friends, you feel like you're God. And that was kind of that thing, that feeling when in college. But anyway, fast forward, ended up working at a B2B marketing agency doing really unsexy types of marketing. So think, these types of businesses are like dirt on the fingernail businesses. Think like windows, doors, bathtub manufacturers, right? With sales cycles that are, sometimes 5 years. Specifically, if they're trying to sell to like hotels or something, right, where it's like super long planning cycles. So really started to understand kind of the B2B world there, and really just had a ton of at-bats. From that, my boss there had gone to Y Combinator, which is like one of the kind of leading incubators within the US. And he did the classic thing, move out to Silicon Valley, you see God, you then adopt that as a lifestyle, and then basically moved back to where we were at and was running this agency. So kind of got my initial introduction to there and really to software through him. And then ended up at a company called Rupa Health, joined as employee 6. It was a marketplace software for specialty lab testing. We ended up taking it from a $20 million valuation to a $110 million valuation in about 6 months. So there we really focused on what we believed was just kind of the future of all companies, was they were going to have to evolve into media companies. And so we built out a podcast. It's called the Root Cause Medicine Podcast. Took it from 0 to 100. And I think around 80,000 downloads a month when I left. So it's a top 20 medical podcast in the US. I think it's now a top 100 health podcast in the US. And then also built out this whole live class kind of arm of the company. And then from that, we use that pillar content to make all of these other pieces of content, right? So it's like long form pieces of content, repurpose it into blog posts, newsletters, tweets, Instagram posts, whatever you can imagine, basically using that source material and then transforming it. That was really the kind of the inception and the origin for these companies that we're building. Swell AI is kind of the biggest one, and it's content repurposing powered by AI. And really, it began with what we were doing at Rupa. Like I needed a team of 25 people to be able to do kind of that whole content marketing process. And now, with software that employs these AI LLMs, like we can basically do the same thing with 1 or 2 people. So it's just a factor of 20 difference from an efficiency standpoint. And so, that's kind of the high level. Happy to dive deeper on any of it, but
Yeah, cool, man. Awesome. What a journey. Great experience there. And yeah, I'm sure you've, and then I love that, as entrepreneurs, we're solving problems, right? So you saw, okay, this is how we solve this. We've created this. Now, how can we do it, for other people, which is obviously what you're doing now. And let's get into it around that. Yeah, that leveraging AI for content marketing piece. So, you've got, do you want to explain a little bit more just initially, right? Because you've got Draft Horse AI and Swell AI, like I guess these differences and how these came about, what they do exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So Swell AI originally was just like an AI writer for podcasters. So you import an MP3 file and we create a transcript, and then based off that transcript, you could basically prompt the AI to create whatever you're looking for, whether it's podcast show notes or YouTube descriptions or email newsletters. That was a huge one that we saw where they would just sit down and basically talk for 30 minutes and then have the AI structure that into a cohesive newsletter. But so the original version was just that. Then we had clients that were asking for the ability to basically transform their podcasts into upload MP4 files and create clips. So did the same thing, built out a video editor component of it. And then now we're kind of servicing, I would say it's almost like a three-prong. Anybody that's doing like webinars, that's turning into a larger segment. Anybody that's doing YouTube videos, same deal. And then also anyone that is, again, still doing podcasting. So really it's what it is like content repurposing powered by AI. And our whole thesis is that it's easier than ever to make really generic average content, where all the value is captured is in stuff like this, right? Where you have an industry expert on, you have a conversation with them about whatever domain knowledge that they have that they're an expert in, capture that within a recording, and then when you look at that transcript, right, like all that knowledge is stored there. When you have the AI write based off of that knowledge, that transcript, the outputs that you're going to get is so much greater. It's standard deviations better in comparison to if you just prompted the AI to generate that piece of content. So yeah, just to give a concrete example to this, say you go and you interview whatever 5 hotel marketing experts, right? Have a 30-minute conversation with each of them. You create transcripts for each of those conversations. You put that into the context window, and then you say, okay, write me a blog post based off of this provided content that I just gave you, that is about hotel marketing strategies for 2024. Now, if you took that same prompt and just prompted the AI, write me a blog post for hotel marketing strategies 2024, the output quality difference that you're going to get by the interviewing of those individuals versus just what the general knowledge of the AI is writing is going to be so much greater, right? And so that was kind of our thesis in this wave that we're writing. We're seeing this happen more and more, right? Like every B2B company, every company is going and yeeting thousands of blog post articles that are AI written out into the ether. And it's just basically that whole space is kind of blowing up. So I say that it's funny because Draft Horse, which is this other company that we ended up spinning out of Swell AI, we built it as an internal tool initially. It was a programmatic SEO tool to create blog content. I was talking about it in public on Twitter. We ended up like having people asking for, like, they wanted to buy that. So we spun it up over a weekend. It ended up going viral. We got it to like 10K MRR, and I think it was like 30 days, just absolutely crazy. So 10K recurring revenue, just all from some random tweets. But it's just writing off the general knowledge of the LLM. What we found to actually be way more impactful, and this is where all this is going, is you write based off of what is ranking currently on Google for page 1 for the target keyword that you're going after. So say, for example, you wanted to rank for Google ads for apartments. You would go and you would find everything that's ranking on page 1 for Google ads for apartments, scrape all of that data. So maybe it's YouTube transcriptions, it's these other blog posts that are written. You then put that into the context window and you say, okay, AI, now write me a blog post based off of this source material that we already know is ranking page 1 on Google for that target keyword phrase. And what you're going to see is the output quality that you get is just going to be incredible, right? It's it's almost human level at that point because it's incorporating what all of these other people have already researched, et cetera. If you go and Google that keyword, again, Google ads for apartments, I'm going to come up position 1, or I should, or it's somewhere in there. That blog post is entirely written exactly through that strategy that I just described. And it's just a test I'm running in public currently. Yeah, so that is kind of the origin of these things and how we see this kind of playing out from the content marketing side. What I'm really obsessed with is like AI powered marketing workflows, right? So what used to be, entirely team driven, maybe you're hiring VAs to manage, to do parts of these tasks. How can we incorporate software into those workflows so that we can increase those output quantities? So where, I'm trying to publish more information, right, and create more content than Fortune 500 companies, right? And you can do that now with a team of 3 people, and that are powered by these AI tools from a content generation standpoint, and that repurposing, that remarketing, et cetera. So
Yeah, awesome, man. I love it. Let's talk just quickly around how much you can put in, because I know a little while ago, like me trying to get all the transcription from my podcast episode and trying to upload it, it was too many characters, right? When I was doing it like that. So has now evolved where you can chuck more into the AI and it can handle that, to be able to then distill it down into something that's going to be, impactful for people in a blog or whatever a medium.
Totally. So this keeps evolving. When we first launched Swell, as an example, the token limit was about 4,000 characters. On contrast, now that token limit is about 128,000 characters. So the length that you can put into this thing is like, hours of recorded content, basically. And so because it has, again, all of that context awareness, the outputs that you can generate from that are just such higher quality. In the beginning, because we had that 4K limit, we were like chunking the transcript. And so we'd write based off of like the chunks. It was basically, we were summarizing each of the chunks, and then we were putting that into a new kind of composite. And then all of the content that we wrote was based off of that composite, which is like, the hacky way to get around this. But as these LLMs mature and kind of grow, each of them have different skill sets that they're becoming better at. So like GPT-4o Mini, as a great example, is one of ChatGPT's or OpenAI's flagship models. It's extremely fast, really lightweight, really cheap. The reasoning behind it is not as powerful as some of their other models, but for certain tasks, it's really great, right? When you're trying to summarize information, really quickly. In contrast, if you look at like Claude, which is from Anthropic, Claude Sonnet 3.5 is basically one of the best like programming LLMs that has ever existed so far. You can just go on Twitter right now and look up what is it called? Replit just launched this new feature set where you basically can like build full stack web applications, all just prompting through Replit and Claude. So I can go and say, hey, build me a 2-sided marketplace to sell local goods within Sydney, as an example. And it will generate all of that code, all of the files that you need. And then you can deploy that directly from within Replit so that, within 5 minutes, this application is live and accessible via the web, right? And so like, these are the things that are starting to happen, like in the kind of exponential growth that's starting to occur with all of these tools and all of these, again, workflows that people are combining together to kind of create this cyberpunk future that we're starting to approach and live in. So
yeah, awesome, man. And what are you seeing as having the biggest impact, right, already? Because you've got obviously the blog side of things, for example, with the SEO side. You talked a little bit about, videos that can be cut up and things like that. When you do interviews, other ways of, I guess, repurposing this stuff. So what do you think is having, I guess, the biggest impact, at the moment, from a speed perspective and just ease of getting it out there and, making an impact for, for content for yourself or your brand?
Yeah, great question. I think it really depends on the industry that you're in. I spend a lot of time thinking about this, actually. And really right now, I think for every industry, it's headed towards video. Whether you're in B2B or you're in consumer, it's kind of that same thing is happening. And the reason for that is really based off of how people discover things now, right? So if you interview people, there's great data on this too, of like, how do people discover B2B tools? It's largely through social media anymore. Same thing if you're looking at consumer goods, it's largely through social media anymore. It's very seldom that people go and they search for a random thing and then land on some blog post and that influences their purchasing decision. In reality, what's happening, especially if you look at the younger generations, is they're going directly to TikTok and they are searching on TikTok for, best restaurants in XYZ neighborhood in, Denver, Colorado, as an example. And then whatever comes up in those responses, that's what they're choosing to go to. And so it's like just totally changing kind of the discovery mechanism. And the larger trend that's happening here, to kind of zoom out, is all social media. Like, why does social media exist, right? They are monetizing your attention. So the more attention they can capture from you in a daily period, right? And like when you look at their earnings calls, like they talk about it like this, like, oh, we're on average getting 5.6 hours of people's day, right? Like that's crazy when they're thinking about this. And then they're competing against Netflix, they're competing against YouTube, they're competing against all of these other channels that try to own as much of your attention as possible on a daily basis. But the reason for that is because they can sell more advertisements, right? So TikTok really changed the whole industry, like when it comes to social media. They introduced this For You page feed, right? And For You page content. What this means is you don't have to follow anybody to be entertained by this platform anymore. It's now just going to show you content that it thinks is most likely for you to stay on platform. So if you look at all social, they're now all doing this, whether it's Twitter, they also, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram, whatever the channel is, they're all shipping these For You page features. And the reason is because it keeps you on platform for a longer period of time. And so with that, context, I think for most companies, like what I try to, anytime I'm talking to a brand or anybody that we're working with, is like, you need to think about volume, because no longer is it really dependent on like how many followers you have or any of this. It's like, how many at bats can you get? So how many pieces of content can you put out into the world? And then look at that data. Okay, cool. We published 100 different, pieces of short form video. We saw that these 10 performed way better than all of the other ones. Well, what do those 10 have in common? What you're probably going to identify is that there's a content format that's really effective and really viral for that platform. And then what you're going to do is then you build that template out and you turn that into a process that you repeat on a daily, weekly basis, right? So it's, okay, cool. We publish content, we look at the data, we analyze the results, then we go and make more content, and it creates this growth loop. But I think for a lot of people, what they don't realize is that like that's just the discovery mechanism of where we're at currently. People don't make high ticket purchase decisions based off of short form social content. They discover brands and get into that top of funnel through that process. So the real power, if you're trying to sell like a higher ticket item, again, if you're in the B2B spaces, long form content is just an absolute killer, right? I own an agency. We grow email newsletters for podcasts. And we have a client, they're in the biotech space, and they like basically lease out lab equipment to early stage startups. So their deal size is about like $250,000 if they close one of these. And so for them, I mean, that's a high trust purchasing decision, right? When you think about it. And so what they did is they started the show. They interview their target, their target customer on the show. Basically, they invite them on. They then say, okay, cool. We're going to give you all these clips. It also gets distributed out to this newsletter. And then we help them grow a newsletter. I think we're at around like 65,000 subs now of all of these people that are in the biotech industry within their industry. So what this does is it creates demand generation. People already trust the founder, John, right? They've listened to him have conversations with people for hours of time. And so they're already buyer ready. They're bought in by the time they even talk to a salesperson. And when you look at sales outbounding, when you layer on this, so say you have a list of companies or people that you're trying to sell to, if you build this long form content and put that in front of them, it's going to warm that lead up so that when your sales team outbounds them, they're going to be way more receptive to receiving that email and having that conversation, right? And so I think it's those things combined is what we're seeing as the larger trends. It really, again, just depends on like what your business does in the industry. But if you're doing anything that's consumer facing, that's like a lower ticket item, anything I would say probably under like $200 to $300, you can probably do short form and like get enough inbound. And then, layer on everything else after that, right? Layer on email, layer on all these pieces, but to think about kind of like the arbitrage that exists currently, that's the biggest. And then if you're in that B2B space, that long form content that you can get people, again, to sit down with you. I just, for example, I had a YouTube video like go viral a couple days ago. I think it did in total 550 hours of listening time, right? Like, when was the last time you had 11,000 people listen to you talk for 550 hours, right? Like, I mean, maybe people go to conferences like once a quarter and they stand up in front of 100 people and they talk about that. But think about doing that on a weekly basis, for 12 months. How much trust are you going to build with that audience when you're doing that? I mean, that's exactly why you do this podcast, right? It's the same thing. Like, you're building trust at scale with the people that listen to the show on a weekly and a daily, that basis. So
Yeah, definitely, man. Amazing points there. I love it. And I think a lot of people, think, oh, I just want marketing, I want the leads, but don't realize that this brand building, this content piece is so, needed for trust. And then it helps with, like you said, the conversions and all of that side, and builds the brand over time, and allows, for partnerships or bigger deals or things like that, right? Like later down the track, 'cause you're actually building something with some context behind it. So yeah, awesome,
yeah.
man. Really
Well,
love
one thing to add there too is like on the brand side, brand is the only defensible thing anymore. Like product is no longer defensible. Marketing is no longer defensible. The only thing that I can really defend is if people are searching for my brand name, like that's how they're coming into making, a purchasing decision. So like with Swell as an example, like this is the only thing I care about right now is like, is the organic search volume for the brand name increasing on a monthly basis, right? And the reason for that is because I can go and play this game with programmatic SEO. I can go and play this game with influencer marketing, all these other things. But in reality, what's going to be very hard to take away from me as a business owner is if somebody is just searching for the company, right? So then I have to think about like, okay, how do I get more of those branded searches to happen and build that brand over time? Because again, like when you think about selling it as well, like that's what, private equity or any of these companies are actually interested in. It's like, what is your revenues, and like, how defensible is this company? Are people like interested in it? Are they having a good experience, et cetera? And so anyway, yeah, I think that this change that's happened with all of this kind of AI powered stuff as well, is that it's created a huge opportunity to just like, if you make good content, you are going to stand out so much. The gap is so much wider now, right? Experts are more valuable than they've ever been before, and all of time basically, because for the first time ever, everybody has access to this thing that can answer kind of the general knowledge of any question. But that expert domain knowledge is so much more valuable and actually so much more impactful for companies, especially when they're doing marketing activities, right? Like marketing at the end of the day is like you find arbitrage within your market for distribution, and then you capitalize on that distribution arbitrage for as long as you can. And if you like that's the only way that you can actually, grow or really win this game. And so anyway, I just want to emphasize that because it's something I've been thinking about and obsessing about with all the companies that we're building, is like, how do we just increase branded searches for the name of the company? So
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And I love to know your thoughts just on brand, around like the personal brand versus the business brand, right? My wife's got a branding agency as well, but I see more of the personal brand coming out, like, especially me as a coach speaker, it's more important. But I think generally, a lot of the time people buy people, and it's this interesting dance, so to speak, between them. So I'd love to know your thoughts around, what's the positioning, what are we focusing on, pros and cons or whatever from your side, I guess, from a content, perspective as well.
yeah, totally. I think that founder-led companies are winning right now. And when you look at anybody that's just growing exceptionally fast, it's those types of companies. I think that it's because people, they want to attach a person to a brand, right? Like when you think about, one of the most iconic brands of all time, Apple, right? Like why is it iconic? It's because of Steve Jobs. Like, and it's easy to remember, like you think of his face, right? You think Apple and you think of Steve Jobs. Like it's symbiotic. It's the same thing in your mind. In contrast, it's very hard to like visualize, the Apple logo. It's more simple, right? And people are more used to it. But like if you think about that with any of these other brands that are just kind of these nameless, faceless things, I don't have the same emotions, right? I don't have the same emotions that I do when I can attach that to a person. So on the personal brand side, my big thing is like, I'm here to build companies, right? Like that's my entire career. And so I'm just trying to, again, build as much trust and be as much of it almost as like a traffic cop as I can, where it's like, cool, I want to direct a bunch of attention at this thing or this new idea. How do I do that? And so how I think about it is like, I'm trying to build out owned media channels that at any point I can just put whatever I want on those rails, so that I can 0 to 1 that company within 14 days, as an example. So it's like, cool, we have this idea, we built this product, and within 14 days it's profitable, and we now have an engineering team, we have a customer service rep, and we have a marketing person that's working on that product. I mean, for everybody, I think that's working in the internet space, like that's what they're obsessing about. When you're going into a corporate setting, I think it's even more powerful than it is when you're, building companies. In the corporate setting, if you have 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, right? And you're like, cool, like I'm a sales representative and like company A wants to hire you and you're working at company B, and you can be like, hey, company A, like I naturally will bring this value because I have this audience that trusts me. So you can negotiate higher salaries through that, right? And so I think that that's this other component. And again, it just gets back to like, how do people buy? Like they buy from they buy from people, right? They buy from people they trust and they know. And with social and all these personal brands, like I think personal brand is probably a terrible way to describe this. Like what this really is like how many people at scale trust you, and like are you building trust at scale through all of these channels? And when you build these own media distributions, like that is really what you're doing, is you're creating a cadence for that trust to become deeper and more effective. And at the end of the day, right? Like what we're all just trying to create business activity. We're trying to create revenue for our companies. And this is how you can do that now, leaning on these tools and really, leaning on the changes that are happening within the market. So I don't know if that answered the question specifically, but I think that I'm just more trying to emphasize that like everyone now is a brand, right? And how you win in that space is by not burning out. Like if you just make content long enough, you're going to win. And I think that for most companies, like they don't think about it like this. And most people, like the only reason companies die is because they like run out of capital or they burn out, right? That's really the angle. And when you look at biology, it's the same thing. Like that, the bird that has the weird beak to eat some random nut on an island, it didn't win. It just didn't die. All the other ones like didn't survive, and thus it became the winner. And companies, I think, work in the same way. And I think also, if you want to call them influencers or anybody that's doing this personal branding thing, it's the same thing. Just how do you do stuff that's sustainable, that you can do on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, for the next 5 years. And if you can think about that and think in those terms, like you're 100% going to win and also build this super powerful own media channel.
Yeah, love it, man. Really powerful. Yeah, mate. Whatever you're answering is a great different angles and different thinking. I love the way that you're thinking about this stuff. Let's talk more about scaling now companies, right? So I know it's important, and I know just quickly before, I know you had the amazing content strategy. Was it Ripper Health, right? Achieving 100 million plus valuation in just 6 months. So maybe talk a little bit about that, and then we can go a little bit about generally, I guess, scaling as well.
Yeah, great question. So with scaling, I think the biggest thing is so I think about it as like, hey, how can I figure out the puzzles? How can I document the process and define the process? And then how do I hand it off to a person that then is like their North Star is just operating that process, right? They have some goal, they have a dashboard that they live off of. And then on a weekly cadence or a monthly cadence, we sit down and we look through whatever that North Star goal is. And like, this is how I've seen really early stage companies function incredibly effectively, is everybody is aligned on what they're supposed to be doing and what actually is the most impactful thing. And it all should lead back to revenue in some form, right? Like we talk about podcast downloads, like that is, it's kind of a superfluous number unless you can equate it to what is the revenue that can be generated from that. But what we found is like, oh, if we get a lot of downloads to happen, like on this podcast, it gives us negotiation leverage within our partnerships that we're trying to do like co-marketing with. And so we can put a dollar amount on it of like, oh, this deal it probably would have cost us 200K, but now we can get it for 90K, right? So whatever that is, almost half off, because we have this like owned media channel that. And so I think just always trying to, I studied economics in college. I always just try to get it back to like, what is that dollar amount, that like the value of this? And then the process piece, I think the hardest part is like, again, just putting people into a larger system is one of the most challenging things. But what I found to be the most effective is like making their scope of work very finite. Generalists are hard to find. It's a lot more easy to find individuals that are, have a deep knowledge in Google ads. They have a deep knowledge in Facebook ads. They have a deep knowledge in email newsletter marketing, right? And so looking at the entire system, okay, how are these cogs fitting within the system? What are their North Star goals that they're measured to? what are the dashboards that they're living out of to basically prove that the work that they're doing is, providing impact to the larger system. And then as a growth person or like, a founder, your job is to figure out, again, an arbitrage, to define the process, to delegate that or automate it as much as you possibly can. I typically say, hey, automate as much away, delegate the rest. And then as soon as you've got that stable, you just immediately move on to the next thing and you add that next growth curve, right? And when you look at these companies that rapidly scale, this is actually what they're doing. They're identifying an arbitrage, again, putting people in place to run that, and then they move on to that next thing. And then they just layer on growth curve after growth curve. And that's why you see this exponential growth happen within startups. And I mean, there's all these other factors. It's like, I think for marketers, again, one of the things I always try to emphasize is like you have limited resources depending on the biology of your company, right? Like you have limited time, you have limited money, and you have limited mental energy. So for early stage startups, that are funded, they have unlimited money, they have unlimited time, and they have unlimited mental energy. As that company matures, though, then you have less mental energy, and you probably have less time, but you still maybe have money. Now, if you're bootstrapping, it's a totally different biology of the organization, right? Like you have limited money, you have more time, you have more mental energy. And so you just have to look at those resources that are available to you and then basically design the system, based on that. But if you're an enterprise company, it's totally different. You probably have more money, less time, less mental energy. Why do they always go and hire out, agencies or these? They're basically trying to delegate that mental energy and that time component to another company to assist them on it. And so with that kind of process side of it and the scaling up of it, again, I think it's just getting back to figure it out, define, write the documentation, automate as much of it as you can, delegate the rest of it, and then have that person that is you're trying to give them as much ownership of that thing as possible so that they can improve the system. They can do that, but limiting that scope is how especially in this new like global talent setting, like it's going to be very hard to go and hire somebody from the Philippines that can do, cold email, do Facebook ads, do, Google ads, all of these different marketing activities. But I think for most business owners, they try to do that. In contrast, if you just went and you're like, cool, like this person, all they're doing is Facebook ads. This person, all they're doing is Klaviyo email marketing for like, my e-commerce store. What you're going to find is you're going to be way more impactful by kind of siloing those people. And I think this is contrary to what a lot of the gurus say, or they're like, oh, you want to find A+ people that are kind of these jack of all trades, masters of none. And I totally disagree. I think I'd actually, and what I've seen be the most effective is find these experts and then give them all of the resources they need to perform whatever the task is as effectively as possible. And they have that complete ownership, right? And you're not phase changing them and not having them, not having them to have like that mental switching cost of going between these different things of like, thinking about email and then switching in copywriting and then switching over to, Google ads. Those are two different kind of skill sets. So almost allowing them to stay in flow within their specific space.
Yeah, awesome, man. I love it. Really, really powerful there. And I guess one thing that a lot of people might be thinking now is like, okay, well, maybe I do want to ramp it up with content marketing and scale this business, but there's all these different ways of doing it, right? Different channels, different methods of doing it with like content marketing and stuff. Like, what do you think's gonna, in what's working right now is where it should be going? Because you can't necessarily hire 8 people, right? That are specialists in all these areas like tomorrow and go, let's do this. So what do you think is going to have, I guess, because you've done it exponentially, right? In that 6 months where you massively grew the business. What are some of the areas we should be focusing on first that are probably going to give us, I guess, the biggest ROI, in that time, which then allows for more growth later down the track?
Yeah, totally. In the beginning, you're doing transactional marketing. So things that tomorrow get you paid. What are those things? It's going to be stuff like, you're doing paid ads, you're doing cold email, you're doing cold DMs, these things that it's like almost direct response. Like you do an action and then immediately you get this response. So often I see companies where they go and they invest in like SEO and it's like, yo, you don't even know if you're going to be here in 24 months because your runway doesn't even allow for that. And so this SEO activity that you're doing it's going to make no impact tomorrow, right? you only want to, and really the mental model to think about it with is like, just think about it like you think about your financial portfolio, right? When you're young, you're spending way more money on your rents, on your food, like, healthcare, whatever that is for survival, and putting less into your retirement. But as you mature and age up, a larger percentage goes into those long-term investments. It's the same thing with marketing. In the beginning, you're doing those, transactional type of activities that, are almost direct response. And then as time goes on, you're going to start investing in more of these longer term things. We invest in SEO, we invest in content, we invest in these, activities that are going to pay off a year from now, 2 years from now, rather than tomorrow. And so I think that's a component of it. I think the other thing is that people think they need to do everything. And in reality, if you just do like 1 or 2 channels incredibly effectively, I mean, I've taken companies to $1 million ARR doing consulting, like with just Facebook ads and cold email, right? Like that, it's totally doable. And I think it just depends on the company that you're creating. But if you just do 1 or 2 channels, on a daily basis, just every day you're doing that and you're pushing that forward, you can make a lot of impact to your business. And you don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to, simultaneously spin up a, Instagram ad strategy, or Instagram, TikTok, every one of these channel strategy, along with SEO and all of this, like that is something that is going to probably just create burnout within the organization. And it's too many moving pieces too quickly. In contrast, if you just say, okay, cool, like what is working in our industry right now? So say you're a restaurant chain, right? You're like, everybody is learning about this from TikTok and Instagram, right? Cool, we're going to do TikTok and Instagram, and that's going to be our only focus. And if you just do that, you're probably going to make more impact than, okay, now we're going to go focus on Google Maps optimization. And okay, maybe we'll, cold email, people in our area so they know that we host events and all this. It's just going to be too much, too many moving parts early on. Once you've got that solidified and you're in a stable place and your company's in a stable place, that's when you can start thinking about, okay, cool, how do I layer on these other distribution activities? But until that point where you're stable, where the company is in a healthy place, I wouldn't even touch any of those long-term things. Just focus on, what can make impact tomorrow rather than what can it make impact 2 years from now.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Love it. Really powerful stuff there. And yeah, you shared so much gold with us today. And I guess as we're starting to wrap up now, what one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Yeah. I think the thing that, I think about a lot, like what is a business? And at the end of the day, in my mind, like it's 2 things. Like it's having a product people want to buy and being able to sell it, right? I meet product people all the time that are incapable of selling what they built. And I meet, salespeople that are selling terrible products, right? And you can make okay livings doing both of those things. But if you really want to be successful, it's learning how to do both of those simultaneously. And I always, and if you can't figure out how to do one of those things, like that's where partnerships are super effective, right? Where it's like, oh, cool, I have a co-founder in all the softwares that we talked today about, and he's on the product side. That's his focus. He lives, eats, breathes that, and then I'm on the distribution side, right? And like that's why that works. But I think that people overcomplicate businesses and companies, or they like, I mean, if you go to like business school, right, and like read how they think about organizations and enterprise companies and all this, it's like, it's just a ton of fluff. Like at the end of the day, it's like, cool, like GE makes products and then there's people that wants to buy them, like that's how simple this is. But we complicate it. And so just trying to synthesize that down to the simplest form, that's always, I think, the most powerful thing. And on the product side, like never build things that you want people to buy. Build things that people ask for you to build for them, so that they're telling you they want to buy, right? Like especially first time like business owners and founders, I see this happen so often where they try to force a product on the market that nobody wants. And they're like, no, I'm trying to convince you that you want this, or you need this. And in reality, like if we look at Coca-Cola, right? Like they have an unlimited budget to convince you to do this thing, which is drink more Coke. And they have trouble doing that, right? Like we're talking about one of the most powerful like companies in the world can't be successful at convincing people to change their mind. So how do you think that you as an early stage company or a startup is going to be able to change these people's mind? There's no way, there's no chance. Like and it does happen, right? But those are outliers. what's more common is you go and you find something that people are, currently actively looking for, and then you sell that to them. And then a final thing to leave, people with is there's so much market. Like the example I always use, especially in internet businesses, right? Like, and really in physical as well. Like the example I always use is if you look at any city, there's hundreds of window washing companies, right? And they're all at differing sizes and scales, but they're all making money. They all exist. And in the internet world, it's the same thing. There's so many companies that are, providing services in the same categories, and they're all at differing levels, differing scales. And I think the thing to remember here is like your idea doesn't have to be really unique or special. You just have to run a really good business, and you can make a great living with that. And like naturally, what happens is as you like we built Swell AI, which then we spun out another company called Draft Horse, and then out of Draft Horse, we just spun out this company called landingcat.com, which does it's basically we build out like tens of thousands of collection pages for e-commerce companies, right? That whole journey, like we wouldn't have gotten to that final idea that we're at. That is like the market is way more receptive to, unless we did all of those things, right? And so I think that again, like for people that are starting businesses, it's this compounding effect that happens, right? And again, just talking about like random stuff that we've seen, like so with my YouTube channel, this is literally like what I do is I'm like, hey, go and do how-to tutorial videos about some topic that something about. Like for example, one that I just did recently was like how to use Canva, right? Cool. You make those tutorial videos, build a newsletter on top of that YouTube video, and you're going to make money off of the YouTube itself. And you're going to be able to do affiliate, relationships to do promotions during those videos. So that's a business, right? In a very, infant form. From that, you're going to naturally get inbound to do consulting on Canva, like building out, templates for them or whatever that ends up being. And then from there, that's going to naturally evolve into, okay, cool. We need to build an agency that because we have so many clients, like I can only manage 5. I'm going to go hire out a team of people so I can manage, whatever, 100. And then naturally from that, you're going to be like, oh, captions on Canva are terrible. There's not a good solution. I'm going to go build an app that does video captioning really effectively within Canva. And when you break down what happened there, like you started out with a very low barriers to entry thing that just slowly compounded and evolved into a complex thing. And I think that is the most effective path I've ever, I've seen. And most entrepreneurs, they start like that. It's a very simple thing they start with, and then somehow they end up and they're, building humanoid robots that are becoming sentient. But they're not jumping there immediately, right? Like the first version of the thing that they're building is, here's an AI writer for students, and then suddenly, now this robot can peel an orange. But again, it's crawl, walk, run with all of it. So I'm monologuing so much there, but hopefully provide some value to your audience.
Definitely, man. That was awesome. There's a lot of gold there that you shared. And keep it simple, get that MVP out. The market speaks, right? And then keep building, from there and really maximizing that element. So yeah, powerful stuff, man. And yeah, we connected, through our networks. I learned about your awesome journey from being in the marketing and sales space to now being the founder of Draft Horse AI and Swell AI. You're changing the game, so knowledgeable, and you've dropped a lot of gold bombs here today. You're an awesome guy, mate. I'm sure you continue to help businesses leverage AI, to automate content production workflows, and very grateful that we connected. Look forward to getting more involved with this with you as well. So Cody, how can people find you, get in contact with you?
Yeah, easiest. I'm really active on Twitter and LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out in both of those places, and happy to help however I can. So have conversations with founders all the time of like, what should we be doing, from a content standpoint with this new, new world that is quickly becoming the standard. So.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Definitely check out Cody there on Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as these 2 companies as well there. And I'm sure, help you get that AI content game out there and really, get yourself out there into the market. So it's been a pleasure interviewing you, mate. Thanks for being on the Business Growth Show.
Thank you for hosting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Business Growth Show, where we talk about everything on business growth. And please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Ethan Cassiotis, or visit my website, ethancassiotis.com. And if you want to grow and scale your business, you can reach out to me on any platform to see if we're a good fit. So until next time, remember that our business grows where we learn skills and take action using them in spite of fear. So let's create wealth and freedom together.